not exactly what I planned on starting with there this morning, but as you see, some pretty serious things, and I appreciate your willingness to go ahead and to pray for these that we care about and others as well. And just these were immediately brought to my attention just in the last few moments, and also wanted to do that. Thanks for coming today, and what we've been looking at is this story of Joseph, and thus the little bit of an intro there with walk like an Egyptian. And not that that's what our call is to be Egyptians, but Joseph found himself, although Hebrew, suddenly thrown into the midst of the Egyptian life. And yet it wasn't in the best of that life. It started out not being quite so bad. He was still a slave, but had a pretty decent job, or at least through his advancement very quickly in the ranks and God's blessing upon him, he was able to get the favor of this guy named Potiphar. And so things looked like it was kind of balancing out until the wife. And Potiphar's wife then found that she really was very, very much attracted to Joseph. And Joseph doesn't say whether he thought she was attractive or not. He just didn't mess up. He didn't mix up with it. He just said no. Not, well, I'd like to, but no. And when he did give any explanation, he said, this wouldn't be right. I'm not going to sin against God, and I'm not going to sin against your husband, who's entrusted me everything. What a great mindset to have in the sense of knowing the boundaries, right? And guarding ourselves in spite of emotions and feelings or opportunities or the sensualities that get enhanced by all the world and what they offer. Joseph saw past the temptation into where it was going to end up being not good, but bad if he gave into. And so what happens next then is, because of the accusations, he's thrown into prison. And we finished up, or last week looked at this whole idea that even though Joseph was in prison, he still continued to serve, not only God, but serving others. He decided that he could either get bitter or get better, I guess you could say. I know that's an overused kind of a cliche thing, but it's true. If we internalize everything and we keep chewing on it and chewing on it and chewing on it, suddenly we're going to find that we're chewing on ourselves. That's just the way it works, that you can't go ahead and hold resentment, you can't hold anger without it hurting you. It becomes a cancer that's in our bones, and worse than that, in our soul. And what it does is it shades everything else. And somehow, some way, Joseph becomes such an excellent reference for us to look at somebody that seemed to be able to, although he faced extreme adversarial type stuff and was treated so completely unfairly from everything we can read and see, and accused falsely, left for dead, so to speak, by his brothers, hoping and just being willing to let him just end it all, as they wanted to take his life from him, but they turned around and sold him as a slave. Here he is in this crazy prison. How long? Longer than any of us want to spend, because where we're at basically here is he's, by the time he gets out, he's been in there been in Egypt now for 13 years. 13 years. The last two of which he'd had hopes when he interpreted the dreams of the baker and the cupbearer that they would go ahead and put in a good word for him, but they didn't remember, and God didn't remind them, or if he did, they didn't follow through. Now, I think there's a lesson there for us, and it's just that, is do we remember? And coming up here with Thanksgiving, I think that that's a lot of what Thanksgiving is about. I think Thanksgiving is, first of all, about being thoughtful. It's hard to be thankful if you're not thoughtful, and thoughtfulness leads to, wait a minute, did I get here on my own? Thoughtfulness doesn't mean thoughts of yourself all the time. It means thoughts of others. It's recognition. It's going ahead and being reflective. It's stopping and pausing. It's the thing that, to me, and again, it's not my guilt-tripping, arm-twisting type deal to you, but I just want you to consider, when you're not in church, does the world give you a lot of chance to think? I mean, we wait a lot in the world, especially in traffic in Atlanta and at doctor's appointments and other appointments. We wait a lot. Some of you are going to say, well, that's why I quit going to church, because I wait so much to get out of there, But, we do a lot of waiting, but do we reflect, and are we thoughtful about it? Do we stop and kind of take that time out where we truly look at ourselves and say, where am I? Am I where I thought I would be? Am I doing what I thought I would do? Have I kept all my promises to God, if nothing else? Because, see, that thoughtfulness there is what really becomes in as our response. The end of chapter 40 ends up with them saying that, the dreams were interpreted about the baker and this cupbearer. They were both interpreted correctly. One was killed, just like Joseph said he would, and the other one was restored back to his position, but it just ends up saying, but he forgot. In other words, he got so busy getting back into the norm again that he forgot. And I just want to encourage you, especially those of us that have parents. I mean, have we forgot or forgotten? Have we remembered what all they did to us? Even the stuff that we know that we don't remember, them changing our diapers, but do we remember that somebody did? Do we appreciate that? And have we gone ahead, and are we at that point where some of us are, where our parents are old enough now that we may get to change theirs? It's funny till it happens, right? And then suddenly it's not so funny. And I know it's awkward and one thing and all like that, but that's kind of the cycle of life sometimes. But do we appreciate, and in that appreciation, in that thoughtfulness, do we turn around and do we respond at least equally? If not, I'll meet you and raise you too. But you see, so often we're so caught up with living and doing the stuff we're supposed to do and trying to have a good time that we oftentimes forget that really the best times are spent with people. That's what church is about, is that not only we spend time together, but we see that the time spent isn't all about doing and doing and doing. It's about being. And that's one of the things that I struggle with, is being where I'm at. Because there's something else that I need to do that's on the calendar next, and then there's something I want to do, and then there's something Julie wants me to do. And we're in that whole dilemma with the holidays coming up about how are we going to balance this all out with the Thompsons and the Pettits. Equal time or what, you know? And I'm sure none of the rest of the families in the church ever argue about that. But, you know, we don't argue, we just discuss. And but what's fair, you know? And then the drive. Oh, man, the drive. Wish they were close by. And some of you have parents that are close by, but they're too close. Yeah, that was a little bit more of a response than I expected, but they're too close, you know? And with that, what comes about sometimes is just that, And oftentimes, like I said, we aren't even where we are. Today, when you came, did you come with anticipation? Did you plan on coming today? Did you, in that, start this last night saying, God, give me good rest that tomorrow I can be alert? Because this country needs more alerts. You know, but did you ask him to help you to be alert? Or did you look forward to Sunday because it's the best place to take a nap? You know, because I know that I can do that to you. And some are yawning already. Not going to say Tim is his name, but anyway. But it happens, doesn't it? And I know what it's like, and that's why I decided to be a preacher. I thought, man, you could either be talked to or you can do the talking. It's just a lot easier for me to stay awake when I'm talking. But it's so much more than me just talking, and it's so much more than me trying to give you some life lessons. I mean, what we just prayed was that God would speak through me, not because of who I am, but because of how great he is. Not because I'm so holy, but because he is so holy that his holiness can overwhelm my humanity. But not mine, yours as well. And that's the part that what I think we miss and we fail to understand. We just want a fire insurance policy. Keep me from going to hell, Lord. And he's saying, I want to do so much more than that. I want to use you to keep people from going to hell. It's the whole idea of a church. It's, you know, this building didn't get built by the people that are going to come. It was built by the people that were already connected, both physically and financially. They were connected. And as a result of it, we don't have to charge for people to come in the door. But when we're thoughtful, we're thankful, we go, wait a minute, this just didn't get here on its own. And in case some of you are wondering, we don't ever pass the offering plate. And I'm thankful to God. And I think that's a testimony to his provision through hearts that want to give instead of hearts that are prompted to take. But, you know, in it, we don't have an endowment or anything like that, but it's people that say, wait a minute, man, when I came, nobody charged me. It didn't just get here on its own. It cost something to keep the lights on. I want to give so that somebody else can find what I've found. But some people stay away from church because they don't want to give. It's your call. We don't examine tax returns and tell you, and here's your bill or anything like that. I mean, it's about you and the Lord. But I'm telling you, we each have a role we can play. And not just that, but it's a part about us being thankful to God. We can't buy our salvation, but we can appreciate it. And that's where I think some miss out on understanding that it's more than just, quote unquote, getting saved. It's what do we do now that I am saved? And that's what the New Testament is filled with. It's not about just even going to church. That's what you got to do. That's your penance, you know. That's your penitentiary you go to every week. I got to show up every week, or you're not fulfilling. No, it's not that. It's just that in coming, hopefully, what it does is it gives you a chance to be thoughtful. That's my intention anyway from my end of things. And then to give you some things to think about, especially from the Word of God, or examples like Joseph here. So Joseph was forgotten. I think all of us can look back and at least think of one time, and probably closer to 100 times, that somebody's forgot us. I never will forget, not because I know who it was or I'm still mad about it, but man, St. Louis, we had a blizzard-type situation there, 79, 80 area, whatever. Julie and I got married and had a Bronco, and so I was going to college still in St. Louis, Bible college, and was over there. Well, I had my four-wheel drive, and there were people getting stuck all over the place. And I had a bungee strap tow rope deal, not just a little bungee strap, but I mean, you know, a thing, and had a piece of chain in case they didn't have anything to hook onto or whatever. And I didn't mind stopping and helping people. But man, it got to kind of burning underneath me just a little bit when I'd hook on and then pull them out. And then when I go back to unhook, they'd take off. Like, I'm going to run you back in the ditch. I mean, I'll be honest. That's what I thought, thoughtfulness on my end. That's what I was thinking is, why even mess with it? You know, I don't get good gas mileage and you guys driving your little car and you can't get out of your own ditch. But, you know, it's like, golly. But then there were people that were truly appreciative, would even offer money. And that's when it's fun to say, no, that's okay. It's also fun to go, okay, thanks. You know, but I mean, both things are fun, right? But just to be honest, and there's no reason not to be. But I want you to think about that. I mean, have we had people that have forgotten us? But on this scale, the balancing scale, how many people have we forgotten? And we've forgotten them so much we're not even aware we forgot them. And I'm not saying that it's this you owe. I'm just saying it's so much greater when, just like what we try to do here, instead of having it taken or demanded of you, you're free just to do, because it's between you and God. But I would encourage you in your prayer life to ask God and say, God, would you remind me of somebody I've forgotten? I had a situation here recently that Julie, during Pastor Appreciation, I tried to, during that month, think about people that I need to, as a pastor, appreciate. And some, you know, a note, some a phone call, some from the past, some from the present. And there was this one that God put on my mind that I felt I was to do, and I double-checked with Julie, and she felt, no, that's not the devil tempting you to do that for sure. And so I reached out in appreciation, and in doing so, it was quite a reunion. It was a neat thing because we haven't really been together for several years, like 10 or 12 or more. And so it was really cool to just see, and they were surprised. And I'm not saying that again because, wow, look at how great I am. I'm saying that's how great God is. If you ask him, Lord, who should I appreciate? Cheerleaders used to have a song about, 2, 4, 6, 8, who do we appreciate? Something or other like that, I'm sure cheerleaders don't say those cheers today, but anyway, they used to. But I think it's a great cheer to sing every morning to God and say, Lord, who should I appreciate? Because it changes how you treat your spouse and how you treat your children, the people at work. And we all may have jobs that we don't always like, but it's better than not having a job at all. Right, Scott McMahon? And I'm not picking on you. I'm just saying I can't imagine going 2 years without a job. So anyway, Thanksgiving, and it's not just because of this, but it's Joseph here. Joseph had the choice. He could still appreciate people and look back, or he could be so stinking mad about his brothers. If they hadn't done what they did, he wouldn't be in this jam right now. Or they could go ahead and he could be figuring out, man, if I could get out of here, boy, I'd wring their silly necks. Or if I could just get a message to my dad, he'd go ahead and take care of my brothers for me. But nobody knew where Joseph was except Joseph and then the people that had bought him and now the people that were watching over him as a prisoner. So as we open up with Genesis chapter 41, what do we read here? What do we read? We read, when 2 full years had passed. 2 full years from what? From the time that he interpreted correctly the dreams of these 2 men, that he said, would you remember me? Because they were in the big dog's service, Pharaoh's service. He said, wouldn't one of you? He understood the guy forgetting that lost his head. That's easy. If you've got your head off, okay, I don't expect you to appreciate, be thankful, thoughtful, or anything else like that. It's gone. But if you've got that big boulder sitting up on top of your shoulders, then we can use it. And this guy that was the cupbearer, he didn't use it. What happened? Well, he just got back to ordinary life again. He's back in the groove. He's got his friends back. The king likes him, and it's just like, oh, it was a mistake. Maybe the king apologized. Maybe he just had a bad day. But he trusted this guy. This was the guy that drank his wine before he drank his wine. This is the guy that would taste his food. This is the guy that was the last thing between him and being poisoned. And he trusted this guy. And so the guy's glad to be back, get back into his own bed. And oh man, isn't that nice? Some people think it's glorious traveling. I think it's great to be home in bed. You know, I mean, not permanently or anything that way, but you know, there's just something nice about your own bed. And so this guy's back in his bed. He's thinking about, you know, I'm going to be better than ever. Maybe he polishes his shoes, or if he's wearing sandals, his toenails or something like that to look good before the king or the Pharaoh. But nonetheless, he's back in this groove again. And Joseph is a million miles out of his mind. Why? Because he didn't remember how he got back in place. He didn't remember the guy that told him what was about to happen. And that was pretty astounding, to be able to take a dream that disturbed you enough and somebody to care enough that they go, what's wrong with you? And he goes, oh, we had this dream. And this other guy, he said, we both had this dream, and it boggles our minds. And Joseph interprets correctly to the day when they would go ahead and be placed back in service, or the one guy killed. But he forgot. And so as we read that, then we go on. Pharaoh had, though, a dream. Happenstance or God's stance? Who knows? And what's about to happen then within this? Who knows? It's so difficult sometimes knowing in my own life, let alone even in the Bible situation. There's times that it says that God sent this, like we saw with Jonah a few months back. God sent the great fish. He sent the storm. But we don't always know. Everything that comes in a bad package doesn't necessarily mean God did it. But there's some things that God lets happen, and there's some things the devil does. But the great thing is, our God is so big, so large, so in charge, that he can even take what the devil did to torment you and me and turn it around and get it back even with him. You don't believe it? Just go read the story of the cross. That was the dumbest thing the devil could ever do, was to kill Jesus. It was exactly what God wanted to happen. Terrible, horrible, but perfect. And that's what I want you to know in your own life. Don't give up on hope in God and faith in God, that he can take whatever circumstances, whether it's your mistake, somebody else's sin against you, something the devil himself has done to hurt you, injure you, physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever it would be. Don't believe for 1 second that God can't use that. But then when he does, don't forget to give him thanks. So what we read on and see is that Pharaoh has a dream. He's standing by the Nile, when out of the river there came up 7 cows, sleek and fat, and they grazed among the reeds. And being a kid that raised cows, that means they ate a lot of corn, because that's how you get cows fat. You don't just grass feed them. I mean, you can all talk about that all you want, but hearing the stories and what's organic and range fed and all this stuff, and you know, there's a difference, right, Tim? There's a difference. And I mean, it's so funny, because today everybody thinks that they know what they want, and I just don't have any clue whether what you're getting's really it or what I'm getting's really it. I wonder sometimes if it's even beef. Just go to McDonald's and ask, you know. But anyway, so these 7 sleek and fat cows, I mean, and the sleek part of it doesn't mean they're slim and trim. The sleek part meant, man, you can tell a healthy cow because of how shiny their coat is. Their hide, actually. It's not really a coat, just in case you think they button it on every day. No, it's a hide. But, I mean, it just looks so different when they're well-fed. And that's the way these look. I mean, makes me hungry just even thinking about it. I don't know why at Thanksgiving we don't have T-bone instead of turkey. I mean, it makes a whole lot more sense to me. But after them, 7 other cows. These cows are kind of like some of the corn-fed girls, you know, ugly and gaunt, and they pop up out of the Nile, and they stood beside, I don't know any girls that way. But anyway, I just threw that out there. They come up out of the Nile, and they stood beside those on the riverbank. And the cows, get this, that were ugly and gaunt, ate up the 7 sleek fat cows. And then Pharaoh woke up. Now that's backwards. How does the lesser overtake the bigger? That's really strange. But the gaunt and ugly captures the beauty. He fell asleep again. So he wakes up. Whoa, that was weird. Falls asleep again. Had a second dream. 7 heads of grain, healthy and good, were growing on a single stalk. After them, 7 other heads of grain sprouted, thin and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of grain, here we go again. The lesser eats up the greater. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 healthy full heads. Pharaoh woke up. It had been a dream. Now, if you're counting, this is about dream number what? Let's see. Joseph had 2. We know the baker and the cupbearer each had 1, and now Pharaoh's had 2. So we're up to 6 dreams in this book of Genesis right here, just within this story of Joseph's life. And I know there's some people that want to get all into dreams, and there's plenty of books you can buy how to interpret your dreams. And I have people sometimes come to me, and I say, you can tell them to me, and if God gives me something, I will, but I'm not going to try to make anything up. Why? Because it either is of God or it's not. But there's sometimes it is what you ate, and there's other times it's what you've been thinking about, and there's sometimes it's just weird. Most of Julie's are just weird. Cannot make any sense of them at all. Man, and I certainly never have had one of those, oh, that was from God, type of deal. And I'm not making fun of her. I mean, it's just she likes to talk about it. I just keep mine to myself because, I don't want to appear. Well, let's just read on. In the morning, verse 8, his mind was troubled. Now, have you ever had a troubled mind? You know what that's like, right? It's just that I want to forget it, but what's going on here? He was so troubled that he sent for all the magicians, the wise men of Egypt. And when it says magicians, it means sorcerers. And the wise guys, the philosophers, the men that had proven themselves to be astute and could think, had a pipe, smoke it very slowly, contemplative. He called for all those guys, and they came in and he told them his dreams, but everybody just sat there like, don't know, Pharaoh, what that means. That's kind of weird. But it troubles me. Sorry, I got this pill you can take that'll help make me feel better for a while. No, it troubles me. Then verse 9, the chief cupbearer just happens or just providentially God gives him the elbow and says, hey, dummy, remember? I know God wouldn't say dummy, but my God would. He says, cupbearer said to Pharaoh, today I'm reminded of my shortcomings. I'm reminded that I forgot. I'm reminded that I wasn't a good friend. I wasn't even nice. You see, the Hebrews had a word, K-E-S-E-D, is basically how we'd write it in English. Some say kesed. The others have told me that in the Hebrew it would be hesed. But anyway, what the word means is it's this process of if you treat me with kindness, the moral thing to do is to treat you back with at least the same, if not more, kindness. It's kind of a God law that is designed for humans just to be able, not just to get along, but rather instead it makes the world click right. I think we're a long way away from that in the USA today. I mean, we've drawn the lines, elbows are out, shouts, condemnation, whatever else it might be, and we just forget about just being kind. I don't like in traffic being behind that overly hesed person in front of me. The guy just pulls up to the side street and he goes, oh, come on in. And after about the 6th time, I'm like, would you stop that? We're never going to get through this light, Does anybody relate? I have a little bit of trouble with road rage. Now, it's not really rage. It's more like road rash. But it just burns me just a little bit, chafes me. But, it's like, okay, to me, if I've been waiting 30 seconds, you can at least wait 15 before I let you in. You know what I'm saying? That only seems fair. That's if you're keeping score. But God doesn't keep score. Thankfully, His grace is abounding. He is abounding in love. But this picture of this being is this cupbearer forgot. He didn't even return kindness for kindness. He never even put in a good word. He didn't say, man, he said, I got to tell you, when I was in prison, Joseph went ahead and interpreted this and told me I'd be restored. And man, he seems like an extremely nice guy. You already got him at the head of the, he's the best guy, the warden's best man. He's doing all the stuff, and he really takes good care of the prisoners. And he's no problem at all. You ought to consider that. He didn't do any of that. 2 years, 2 full years. And so 11 years he's been in this Egypt deal. Spent X number of years as a slave. Now he's been in prison the rest of the time. And what's the difference between prison and slave? Well, just tighter quarters. But 13 years total now. 13 years which really, when you consider it, his first 5 or 6 years, I mean, most of us, by the time we go to that first grade in school and we're 6, I mean, the stuff that happened before we can remember, but it wasn't earth-shattering. We didn't have any worries. We didn't wonder how mom and dad were going to pay the bills or any of that stuff, right? I mean, it was kind of, at that age, you just kind of like go with the flow, right? We can do everything. But, you know, once you start getting older, you start contemplating, you start getting, developing certain ways that you're going to be able to get what you want and everything else like that. But Joseph, so 13 years now through his prime years, his teenage years, the best of the teenage, graduating from high school, he missed that, didn't get to go to college. Instead, he's at the school of hard knocks, really getting knocked hard. And finally, somebody remembers. And this guy does put in the good word. And I share that with you because on one hand, isn't that extremely frustrating to think, man, who could do that? You know, I had a friend like that one time too, just like they never remember anything that I did for them. But they're not afraid to say, hey, can you do me a favor? But they never return the favor. I only mention that, but at the same time, there's God. And would it have been premature? Would things have unfolded the way they did if that guy had gone ahead and said? That's the hard part. And I'm not trying to excuse for one moment my lack of remembering and my lack of kindness and my lack of showing somebody favor when they've shown it to me. But in this particular case, I got to look at it and go, maybe God knew there was a more opportune time. Why would I mention that? Because I think it's important that wherever you're at in your life now, and if you will, look and stop and think about what is frustrating you the most, or what are the top 3 things you get frustrated about? And is that something that God is withholding, giving you freedom for because he's waiting for you to go ahead and to grow within it? Joseph didn't allow the forgetting to suddenly turn him mean. He didn't go ahead now and bring back all the trash his brothers had dumped on him and fill himself with anger. He instead still had an open heart and seemed to be patient. But how long do we have to wait? Anybody ever ask that question? I'm waiting, but man, I'm done. How long do I have to wait? And I wanted to ask you today, how do you wait upon the Lord? If you will, let me just share with you a couple of passages here, and I'll try to do this because I think they're good. These are some of the Psalms that, I mean, there's some great Psalms in here, and these are a couple of ones I really, really like. Psalm 34. Psalm 34. So it's really like songs. And all these right here in this, I think, are so cool. I mean, it's just, David says some stuff I don't all agree with, but man, it's just like in 33, as you find 34, but the eyes of the Lord are on those who fear him, on those whose hope is in his unfailing love, to deliver them from death and keep them alive in famine. But now in chapter 34, or Psalm 34, it's really the hymnal of the Jews. Verse 1 says, I will extol the Lord at all times. His praise will always be on my lips. We have a song that we sing that way. His praise will always be on my lips. My soul will boast in the Lord. Man, I would encourage you to tell your soul that. Because I don't think we boast about God enough. And I don't mean God really loves me. I just think that what it is boasting about how great God is when I don't deserve it. My soul will boast in the Lord. Let the afflicted hear and rejoice. In other words, when we share what God's doing for us, it helps those others that are afflicted to stop and say, how can you be happy? Glorify the Lord with me. Let us exalt his name together. And I know I'd like to make comment throughout, but I need to keep reading. I sought the Lord, and he answered me. Didn't say instantly, but he did. He delivered me from all my, what? Fears. Those who look to him are radiant. Now, I mean, this is what I really wanted to do today, was take pictures of you without you knowing it, and then pass them out to you. If I could have just developed them very quickly and pass them out to you and say, do you look radiant? You got that glow. And I don't mean guys that we're supposed to look like we're pregnant or anything, but I mean, do we have that glow? Because it says those who fear him are what? Radiant. Their faces are radiant. Their faces are never covered with shame. This poor man called out, and the Lord heard him. He saved him out of all of his troubles. The angel of the Lord, what a great cool promise to keep in your mind. And not because you feel it, but because you believe it, because God said, the angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him. So your face is radiant when you fear God. And this doesn't mean scared to death. It means you reverence him. You find him as holy and worthwhile. You honor him. Not only will you have a radiant face when you honor God, but on top of it, look what it promises here. And it's so cool. He encamps, the angel of the Lord encamps around those that fear him, and he delivers them. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man that takes refuge in him. Fear the Lord, you who saints, for those who fear him lack. I'd say there are about 10 people that got that. But did any of you this week say, I don't have enough? Maybe it's a lack of fear. You might start there. Those who fear him lack nothing. Lions may grow weak and hungry, but those that seek the Lord lack no good thing. Come, my children, listen to me, and I'll teach you the fear of the Lord. Whoever of you loves life and desires to see many good days, keep your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking lies. That's where he says to start with what you do with your tongue. And then he goes on, he said, turn from evil and do good, like Joseph did away from that lady, but he still did good when he was in prison. Seek peace. Pursue it. You got to keep running after it because it's not going to just come to you. The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous. His ears are attentive to their cry. The face of the Lord is against those that do evil, to cut off the memory from them from the earth. The righteous cry out, and the Lord what? Hears them. He delivers them from all their troubles. Now, deliverance can come in a different ways. We think deliverance would be make my life better. But his deliverance will make your life better, but it's internal far more than it is the external. That's what Joseph had, was this amazing ability in spite of the persecution, the wrong accusations, and being left for dead and all this stuff. Joseph had the ability to still focus on God and to maintain his faith with him. He was radiant. It's why people were drawn to him. It's why he had their favor. And he believed that God would deliver him from all of his troubles. The Lord, verse 18 said, is close to the brokenhearted and saves those that are crushed in spirit. Anybody? Your heart broken? Look at what it says. He's close to you. Let him be. Don't put the hand out. Don't put your expectations of how he needs to show it. Believe it. That's what faith is about, is believing. This is a true principle of God. He is close to the brokenhearted, and he saves those that are crushed in spirit. God loves those that mourn. A righteous man may have many trouble, but the Lord what? Delivers him from them all. So it doesn't mean just because you're righteous you'll never have a problem. It says you'll have many troubles, but God will deliver. Evil will slay the wicked. The foes of the righteous will be condemned. The Lord redeems his servants. No one will be condemned who takes refuge in him. The next one I want to look at is 37, and I won't read all of it to you, but I would encourage you to take time to read it this week. And 73 is one that goes along, so do the 37, then be dyslexic and turn it around and be 73, okay? But let's just read as this 37 starts. Don't fret because of evil men or be envious of those who do wrong. Sometimes that's what we do. We're looking at the other guy and go, how come they've got it so good and I don't? For like the grass, they too will soon wither. Like green plants, they'll soon die away. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and enjoy safe pasture. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Doesn't mean he'll give you everything you want. It means he'll give you new wants. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he'll do this. He'll make your righteousness shine like the dawn. And that's what he's about to do with Joseph here. He'll make your righteousness shine like the dawn, the justice of your cause like the noonday sun. Be still before the Lord, and here it is, and wait what? Patiently for him. Just be still sometimes. That's why, again, I think I want to encourage you to come to church. It's not that you can't have peace and quiet in your bed. It's just that it's not the same. I don't know about you, but I mean, I do this. I'm a preacher. I deliver messages. I prepare messages. But I always get something, if not many things, that I didn't prepare out of my own messages. That's weird. Because it's not just mine, it's his. It makes me think about things I wouldn't have thought about, even doing my own Bible study. I mean, it makes me do things I wouldn't do. You stir that in me. And hopefully I stir that in you to think about and contemplate things that we ignore so that we're not like the servant that got resurrected and put back in position again and forgets Joseph. But no, instead, we remember. When we wait and we're still, when we go ahead and declare God, when we look to Him and our faces are radiant, when we worship Him, not because everything is just right in my life, but we know He's got the end taken care of. We know that He loves us when we don't deserve it. Those are the things that should make the difference in us. And I believe that that's what Joseph reflects. But it says that, go ahead and be still before the Lord, wait patiently for Him, and don't fret when men succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. In other words, don't get your all uptight and in a wad just because somebody else seems to be winning right now. I remember the Falcons playing in a Super Bowl one time. It looked like they had it won. Do you? I've watched enough races to see people that, where'd that come from? And it's still a sore spot? Oh, man, it's a game. But I'm just telling you, as we look at this stuff, man, don't think that just because it appears this way right now, it's going to stay that way. Whether it's your problem or it's even you're prosperous right now. Whether it's somebody else look like they're getting away with murder, hey, God doesn't miss a thing. And I just want to tell you, you can be imprisoned even though you're out free. If these things are what bog you down instead of being able to wait patiently on the Lord and just be still and know that He is Lord. One of the things that you that don't read the Bible that you miss out on, one of the greatest things you can ever do is start taking the Bible and telling God, this says that you are like, and fill in the blank. This says that God, if I delight myself in you, you'll give me the desires of my heart. God, what do I need to do to delight in you? What would my life look like? And how would my desires change? Because I think the opposite is true. My desires, my personal desires, oftentimes will get in the way of me being delighted in God because I'm frustrated with God. Because why don't you make this work? And He can, but He knows what's best. I want to give you one other thing. So basically, and you can keep reading now and ignore the rest of this or whatever, but when I was doing this, He just caught me about Joseph waiting patiently and waiting upon the Lord. And there's another one, that wait upon the Lord, He'll renew your strength. But I got to thinking, there's another thing that most of us are fairly familiar with, but I don't think we often look at it. What's another way we can wait on the Lord? Well, yes, it's serving. It's being a waiter. While you're waiting, do something. That's what Joseph did. That's what's marvelous. That's what I applaud him. I mean, it's like whether he was in the house of Potiphar, whether he was in the jailhouse, he waited upon people. And he did it as to the Lord. And that's what we're told to do as well as New Testament Christians. Even if you've got an abusive, harsh boss, treat him and serve him as you would the Lord. That's the way you discover God's presence. And I mean, it changes the attitudes and everything. And I'm out of time, but I don't want you to miss this. Think of ways, how do you wait upon the Lord, or how could you change? Back here to Genesis 41. So what happened is this guy suddenly remembers, right? Pharaoh was once angry with the servants. He tells them the whole story. Verse 12, now a young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams. He interpreted them for us, giving each man the interpretation of his dream, and things turned out exactly as he interpreted them to us. I was restored to my position. The other guy was hanged. So Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he's quickly brought from the dungeon. How fast? Quickly. He hears about this guy. All his wise guys he's got on staff and paying them good and everything else like that, they can't come up with a thing. They're just dumbstruck, awestruck. Here's this guy, he says, I want him. Bring him up here. But what I want you to catch here is, look what he had to do to come into the service of the king. When he had shaved, changed his clothes, I presume bathed. In other words, you don't come before the king as a prisoner. You come before the king, and this is the way you honor him. I want to mention that because I want you to consider, how do you come before King Jesus? Do you make God meet you on your terms, or are you willing to get on his? Do you read the Bible to say, God, have I done everything that you want from me because I can't pay you back? You gave me great favor on the cross. You paid for my sins. I can never pay you back. But what can I do for you, Lord, that would at least show I appreciate and I'm thoughtful, I'm conscientious of you and all you've done for me? But one of the things I think we oftentimes miss is the consecration end of it. Anyway, Pharaoh said to Joseph, I had a dream and no one can interpret it, but I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. And this is where, again, you see the credibility of Joseph's soul and heart. I cannot do that. Do what? I can't interpret dreams. No, but this guy said you could. Joseph wanted to make it very clear. No, God interprets dreams. What's important about that? That's integrity. It's what any one of us that ever served the Lord and served people for the Lord, we've got to have. I don't want to take credit for what God does. I love hearing confirmation. I'm still kind of blown away when some of you that I know and others of you that I've never even met before will go out and say, you talked about things that there's no way you knew. That's right, God did. And that ought to be that magical moment when we go, wow. Not Steve wow, God wow. I mean, he talked through Balaam's donkey, so why couldn't he talk through me, right? But that ought to be your wow moment is, Steve isn't that, he doesn't have it together that much. How in the world did God speak through? Because if he can use me, he can use any of you. But I want you to see this, that Joseph is quick to give credit where it's due. He said, I can't, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires. And I'm going to jump on ahead to verse 38. Actually, verse 37 is the paragraph. So Genesis 41:37. The plan seemed good to Pharaoh, to all his officials. So Pharaoh asked them. He asked who? All of his officials, the wise men, the magicians, and all these guys. He said, can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God? Are you living in a way and serving in a way and waiting upon the Lord and thus waiting on other people in a way that makes them go, wow, I can see the Spirit of God in you? That should be our goal. That's why Paul in the New Testament, even Jesus with much of his ministry, told people to go leave your life of sin. Why? Because changed people change people. The bold and the arrogant will go ahead and say, I believe and I accept Jesus, and stay the same way they were. Why do I call that bold and arrogant? Because they don't even believe that Jesus is worth changing for, let alone that he and the Holy Spirit inside of us are the change agents. The world is waiting for people like this, that they see the Spirit of God in them. They see the way you conduct, they see the way you speak, and you don't speak about certain things. They see that you have not just a good life, but a godly life. And we spend all of our time wanting the world to like us when God is wanting us to love him. And then the world will begin to love him if we are loving him. But if we don't show them how, if we aren't different from the world, then they're going to go, what's the use? But if we really let God's Spirit take effect in us, and it's not just that he saves us, but he saves us and frees us from our sins so that we don't have to sin and live that same way anymore, people will begin to take note and go, wow, what is it about you? When you do that then, whether it's an interpretation of a dream or whether it's instead being able to minister to somebody's soul or to seeing somebody in need and just saying, can I pray with you? Suddenly this unbelievable magic of God begins to take place, and they connect and say, you've got contact with God. But as long as we're like the rest of the world and say, oh, you poor thing, and don't even pray, or we sum up our prayers, and God bless all the people, and the missionaries, and the soldiers, and this and that, and never pray individually for anybody. You see, I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm just trying to say there's more. And the sad thing is, until we do more, and it's not do it to get salvation, but do it because we've really been saved, the world won't ever begin to get it. And so that's the last part that I want to bring up here. Pharaoh brought Joseph up out of the prison. Let me tell you what, there's a bigger king than Pharaoh. Pharaoh is a king of Egypt. We serve Jesus Christ, the Lord of lords and the King of all kings, the universe. He's the King of heaven. The kingdom of heaven belongs to him and the Father and the Holy Spirit. And God's called us up. But some of you never have cleaned up. You still want to wear prisoner's clothes. And yes, you can still interpret the dream as what Joseph could have, but he understood he was coming into the presence of somebody. Do we prepare our hearts to come into the presence of God? Now, on one hand, I know I can never flee from the presence of God. But you know what? On the other hand, it's up to me to bring myself into that awareness of God's presence and allow myself to know when he's speaking to me, and whether it's through somebody or speaking to me to serve somebody. That's the whole key about it. But man, oh man, let's at least get straight first. How am I saved? Am I telling God, or do I look to see what he said? And do you know that you're saved? Because you can point to the Word of God, and not just one passage, but you can point to it and show in the passages of the Word of God, this is what I need to do to be saved. And then the follow-up. Not because you have to, but because you are saved. Now then, we ought to be different. We ought to have this Spirit of God in us, just like Joseph, to the point that the world goes, wow, that's not ordinary. It's extraordinary. Like I said, when we begin to serve God in a way like that, it's just like with Joseph. Because he didn't allow himself to be bogged down with his current situation, past way of being treated and lied about. He was open to serve others, and as a result of that, God was free to do miracles through him, like interpreting dreams. And any of you that read ahead know, he didn't just interpret the dream. He was, took the elevator, not the stairs, to the top. Because this guy was impressed. The Spirit of God dwells in him. You're not saved if the Spirit of God doesn't dwell in you. And I don't say that to be mean, ugly, and worship team, if you will, come on up. I'm saying that just to be completely honest with you. You want to have a good funeral, and it's not going to be about, oh, he did this and she did that and da-da-da-da. It's going to be, if I'm around, telling others that, man, they didn't just believe in God. They let God do something with them. I had passages I wanted to deal with, but as they tune up and start to play, let me read this one from Corinthians. I love this one. 1 Corinthians 1:26. He says, brothers, think of what you were when you were called by God. Not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many of you were influential or of noble birth. But God chose, he picked the foolish. That's me. The things of this world to shame the wise. He chose the weak. That's me. To shame the strong. He chose the lowly, the low life. That's me. And the despised things, and that certainly is me. And even the nobodies, the things that are not. That's me. And he did it to nullify the things that are, so that no one can boast before him. It is because of him that you are in Christ Jesus, who has become for us the wisdom from God. That is, he's become our righteousness, our holiness, and our redemption. Therefore, let him who boasts, boast in the Lord. I just want to encourage you today, man. God's there. He's still on the throne. He's still calling. Jesus, even in the last love letter to the church in the book of Revelation, said, man, I'm standing at the door and I'm knocking. You open the door and, man, I'll come in and eat with you. But he won't barge the door open even though he could. And I just want to ask, whether it's the first time or whether it's because of something in your life that you've just left God out, man, is it time for renewal? Is he calling you up from the prison today? Say, hey, get yourself free. Free from all your life and living in his kingdom. So when you die, you're not surprised the kingdom you're ushered into. And you're not looking back going, wow, if I'd have known that, I'd have done more. I'm telling you, fear the Lord in all the great ways. Love him, respect him, honor him. Let's stand, let's sing to him. Well, let's bow before him today, man. Let God lead you in the response. And if you're putting off being baptized, it's warm. We got towels, we got shorts, we got shirts.
The weapon may be formed, but it won't prosper. When the darkness falls, it won't prevail. 'Cause the God I serve knows only how to triumph. Oh, my God will never fail. Oh, my God will never fail. And I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. Oh, oh, oh. There's power in the mighty name of Jesus. Every war he wages, he will win. Oh, I'm not backing down from any giant. I know how this story ends. I know how this story ends. And I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory.